So we've been going through the 10 Commandments, and we've already gone through the first 4, and I'm just going to do a brief recap on those, because there's something kind of interesting about the first 4 commandments that I didn't know. So the first commandment is, you shall have no other gods before me. And a deeper look at this is to only see God as to see God as the only source of our supply. Not looking at the problems in our life and thinking they have to change. Not looking at the conditions and wishing those would change or wishing somebody else would come through for us. We see God as the source of our supply, and then the activity of God works through everything in our life, including those conditions and things that we see as problematic. The second commandment is, do not make for yourself an idol. Now, the deeper look at this commandment is, don't even make any mental images of lack. Don't even think, oh, this could be a problem. Just keep your focus on the wonder that is God. Because then, again, God comes through. The activity of God is within everything in our life. The third commandment, do not take the Lord's name in vain. A deeper look at this is, remember, everything is sacred because everything comes from God. So don't even speak the word of lack or limitation. Don't even speak it. Focus on the wonder that is God, and you call forth the activity of God through all things in your life. And then the fourth commandment is, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Okay, a deeper look at this is about our activity, but giving ourselves a rest. But not only giving ourselves a rest, we are allowing God to do its part instead of trying to take over everything and control it all ourselves. So this is let go and let God do it. Now, these first 4 commandments are about right action toward God. They're about how we are seeing our relationship with God. How we view our relationship with God deepens our awareness of the activity of God, and it expands our consciousness on the activity of God working through us and into our life. When we align with these first 4 commandments, we are aligning with the divine. This influences our behavior. This changes what we do next, and now we are a force for good in this world. So that's what's happening. And when we can align with the first 4 commandments, it's easier to align with the last 6 commandments, which are all about right action toward the world at large, toward humanity. So we come to the 5th commandment. Honor thy mother and thy father. Or honor thy father and thy mother. Okay, remember the 10 commandments. They were given during a time when people actually needed law. They did. They needed the law. They needed a container. They were learning how to live life amongst each other in harmony. And so some of the stuff had to be stated, obviously, like thou shalt not murder. We just get up in the morning and this never occurs to us, most of us. Right? We just know you don't murder. You just don't. And what has happened with these 10 commandments, they were so transformative that they planted the seed to allow us to be in the consciousness that we are in now. Right? That's how transformative the 10 commandments were. In that time, they planted a seed that has changed generations to generation. So honor thy mother and father, that's another one of those commandments. Back then, it was kind of obvious. But really, our relationship with our parents gives us a powerful lesson on dealing honorably with other people. Right? When we can deal honorably with our parents, we can deal honorably with anyone, I guess, right? But not you. You're easy. You're so easy, Ma. You're just so easy. Honor, I didn't realize this, but honor is not just about being respectful. It's not just about being polite. It's also living up to something, and it is fulfilling the terms of something. Now, for us in our life, that would be living up to our potential and fulfilling the terms of our life. With this life, we were given by our parents, right? All of us in this room, we have this life because of our parents. And even just for that, they should be honored. They should be honored. Now, a lot of people don't have any problem honoring their parents. I don't, right? So I just was thinking about you a lot in this talk, Ma, as I was coming up with it. But you know what? Not everybody can do this easily. There's some people who had abusive childhood situations. Some people had really critical parents, or they lived under an authoritarian rule where like they were suppressed and told they had to do things a certain way and that was the only way. Now an adult in their lifetime may look back on that and think, how am I supposed to honor my parents? I can't even stand to be around them, right? I can't even find it in my heart to forgive them. How do I even honor that? How do I do that? And so I take you back to what else honor means besides respect. Honor living up to your potential and fulfilling the terms of this life that you were given. This is about doing the very best with what you've got, no matter what kind of parenting you received. You still have the spark of the divine within you, and you still can do anything, right, by calling forth that divine spark. We honor all of our parents. We honor our parents just by living up to our potential. We can do that, no matter what kind of parents we had. Right? We can still step into our divine potential. Now, if somebody had really cruel and abusive parents, they may have to set boundaries with those parents. They may have to decide, well, I can't see them anymore. I can't be around them. It hurts me too much. But honoring is not about justifying abuse or bad behavior. Honoring thy mother and father is just honoring the spark within them and then deciding, you know what? I can live up to my potential, no matter what. And we live up to our potential. We may have to break a cycle of addiction or a cycle of lack and limitation thinking. We may live up to our potential by loving big, right? By being just the most loving and generous person and just displaying that for the world to see, letting ourselves be vulnerable. It's like, yeah, I love you, so what? What are you going to do about it? Right? So we just love big. Everyone's parents, all of you, your parents did a holy miracle. Every single one of you, your parents did at least one holy thing. And that was they brought you into this world. And now you're here and you get to do something with that. You're here and you get to be a force for good. You get to call forth the good. You get to send the good out into the world. Now, when we can do this, what we're doing is we are developing standards of right action that allow us to deal honorably with everybody else. So here we go into a deeper look at this fifth commandment of honor thy father and thy mother. It is, you shall deal honorably with God and with all human instruments through which God's good is manifest for you. I'm going to say that one more time. That's a lot. We shall deal honorably with God and with all human instruments through which God's good is manifest for you. Somewhere, there was a human. The activity of God worked through them and did something really, really good for you. Even if they weren't like the greatest person in the world, or even if you spent 2 minutes, or even if you just passed by, right? You just passed them by on the street. Maybe they smiled at you. That's still activity of God coming through. Okay, so to deal honorably with others, we want to look at this. We want to remember this. God is the source of all things. Everything on this planet comes from God. Everything comes from this divine substance and takes a different expression. So we honor the activity of God in all things. Okay, we see that there's sacredness working through everything on this planet. In the book Prosperity's 10 Commandments, which is what this whole series is based on, it's kind of a book, right? It says, we are to be courteous and render, it's also old, so the language is kind of old. We are to be courteous and render due obedience to God as the giver of all good gifts. And since we are constantly accepting his bounty, we are in justice bound to give him what is his due. Courteous is about being respectful and being grateful, recognizing the sacredness in all things, and seeing that the activity of God is busy everywhere, right? It's courteous to recognize that. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to recognize this is all the activity of God. Obedience to God is this: following the Ten Commandments. Y'all, I think most of y'all have heard the first 4 so far. There's a lot of really deep, powerful, transformative stuff in there. And remember, the Ten Commandments, they seem like just basic laws to a people between 3,000 and 6,000 years ago, depending on what resource you look at or what source. But you know what? Look what it transformed us into. Look how we are transformed by that later, like how deep we can go into it. Obedience to God, then, is just following those 10 Commandments, or following the 5 unity principles. Okay, which is, you see God in all things. You just remember that. And God is in all things, and also that means me. And I create my experiences in my life through my way of thinking and acting. And I align with the divine within me, because then I do step 1 and 2 and 3 a lot better. Right? Because I'm letting the activity of God work for me. Through me, for me, as me. So I'm walking the walk, right? That's step 5, walk the walk. It's not enough just to read about it and take notes about it and journal about it and have a bookmark about it and be happy with your bookmark, right? We are here to do the work. We're here to do the work. I do like my bookmark a lot, though. Denise Nichols gave it to me. So God is on all things, and we are obedient to God by putting either the 10 Commandments or the unity principles into action. We just work them. We work them in every part of our lives. You know what? You can also show obedience to God by living the 4 agreements. That's also being obedient to God, because you're recognizing a divine source, right? That you don't have to be the one controlling everything, right? There's something divine working through everything, something sacred. This is how we deal honorably with God. Now, one of the things that came from God, I was thinking about this a lot last week. It's our body, our physical body. You've got this heart circulating blood through you. Your brain is doing, like, who knows what? I don't know. There's some people over here that probably know. I don't know. But there's all this stuff is working inside of us. Okay, so here you are. You started off as a tiny, tiny little egg. So tiny you need a microscope. But circumstances were just perfect in a moment. And then this activated a divine program. And all of a sudden, vital life force energy was called through that little egg, and that little egg became a you. And here you are sitting right now. The divine intervention in a moment, and here you are. So how do we deal honorably? That is the gift of this. How are we dealing honorably with this? Okay, I know I was asking myself last week, like, am I talking about all the stuff that works and how great it all works as much as I'm talking about the stuff that doesn't work? Like, I was thinking about that. It's like, this week, I'm going to talk about how great my elbows are doing. Like, my eyes are seeing stuff, and my mouth tastes things, everything's working really good, right? But really, look at your body and all that it's done for you over the years, right? It's done a lot. Are you dealing honorably with your body? Right? Are you doing half as much? And I ask myself this too. Am I doing half as much for my body as it's done for me up to this point? Right? Up to now. I'd say no, I'm not. But I'm working on that. So, how to deal honorably with others. How to deal honorably with others. These human instruments through which God's good is made manifest for you. Again, we learn this first through honoring our parents. We demonstrate honor in our behavior through something called the law of divine compensation. And which basically, if you break down the law of divine compensation, it is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Now, I have kind of a weird take on this that popped into my head about 10 years ago. And, but it is this. It's basically, it's a cycle of giving and receiving. But I want to demonstrate this because it's really fun to think about. Okay? I'm going to toss this ball. I'm going to aim it that way so like one of those guys will catch it. All right? You're going to have to be scared of the ball. But I'm going to toss the ball. I'm tossing the ball. Okay. Taylor caught the ball. He didn't toss it. He caught the ball. And here's something else. Equal. Okay, it's equal, but opposite. So how I tossed it pretty gently because I throw like a girl and I'm good with that. But he didn't get knocked out of the bench. He didn't receive it at a different velocity than what I tossed it. Also, I threw a ball and he received a ball. It didn't become a shoe in midair. Okay? I'll toss it back. Let's see. Woo! Good throw, good toss. So he just tossed it, and that was a little firmer toss. That was a little firmer. Yeah, that was a little firmer. Okay? But that's how I see for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So think about this. We give what we just gave out, somebody received it. Right? And it's in equal measure. Somebody throws some good at us, we receive the good. Okay? So we're receiving it. Now, what happens also is, so say you get a flat tire and somebody changes your tire for you. You don't have to give back changing their tire later on, right? We don't have to literally give the same thing. But maybe somebody changes your flat tire, but it's at a car dealership. So you pay them money as divine compensation, right? You pay money. Or maybe it's your neighbor who changes it for you, or like my husband changes my flat tires. Okay? So maybe somebody might write a thank you card, or bring somebody a 12-pack, okay? Or like a peanut butter sandwich or something. I mean, we can just give all kinds of different things. But what we're doing is we're saying, oh, I received this gift of having my tire changed, and I will do this, okay? I know you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I don't remember that. I remember that 12-pack. Okay, so it's giving, or the peanut butter sandwich. So there is a cycle. It's basically just simplified to that. There's a cycle of giving and receiving. Now, in spiritual circles, we love to talk about giving and receiving. Okay, we do. We love to talk about it. Now, I know for myself, if I go back 20 years, I talked about all I wanted, like all the stuff I wanted to get. I'd make up a list of all I wanted. But it never occurred to me to think about what I'd give. Like, I didn't have a big list of, like, what I'd give. Now, as givers, when we are givers, we're honoring the good that we have already received. Okay, we're honoring something we've already received. Now, I threw the ball to Taylor. Taylor threw it back to me. If I just held on to the ball, it's not going to be very fun if Taylor wants to play toss with the ball, if I'm just hanging on to it. We have to keep it going. When I was in high school and we graduated, we had a couple of big beach balls bouncing around the audience the whole time. And you know what? I know I would look around and think when everybody stopped throwing them, I was like, hey, you stopped. You shouldn't stop. Even though I wasn't always catching it, it was fun to just see it constantly in motion. Nobody held on to it, right? They just kept it going. And this is what we got to do in our life. We got to throw the ball. This is the good. This is the good. We are capable of giving out into the world. We are capable of giving to other people all the instruments of God, that good is coming through them for us. We got to keep throwing the ball. We don't hang on to it. So we think about what it is we want to give, but also what we want to give. To deal honorably, we've got to give it freely. We're not dealing honorably with the sacred if we give with resentment, if we give because we feel obligation, right? If we give because we want people to think we're really, awesome, right? Or we're afraid of what people will think if, like, well, no thanks, I'm not going to participate, thank you very much. Okay, so on our list of things we could give, it could have all kinds of things. It doesn't have to be big things. And at the top of your list, of course, it should always be what you're best at. Like, I can give that. I could share that with somebody. But also, how about, I can appreciate someone. I could appreciate somebody. I could have compassion for someone who's extra salty today, and I'll just have compassion for them because maybe something happened this morning and they can't help it. And I'll have faith in that within them. I'll have faith in the divine within them, knowing they're on their own divine timeline that I don't know anything about, so I'll just have faith in what works through them. They'll find their way. Right? They won't be salty forever. I'll hold the light for somebody. Right? There's somebody in our lives right now that they can't take one more hit. So we hold the light for them. Okay, we pray for somebody. We pray with somebody. We send text out. right? My mom sends me these just silly texts on Facebook messaging, right? But I read them at like 4 in the morning. I'm like busting up laughing, right? But it's just like sending texts to people. Sometimes I just like to text people, right? Just to say, hey, I was just thinking about you, okay? Think of all the infinite ways God's good, God's love is available to work through you. And you are only limited by your imagination, right? God's love, the work of God appears like in infinite ways. Infinite ways. You don't have to change somebody's tire. Okay? So we honor all the good that we receive. And we think about this. This is divine compensation. Divine compensation is equality. Equalness. It's equalness. So, are we giving back equal to what we received? Now, I know back in the day, like when I started coming here, like over 20 years ago, I was really entitled. I felt very entitled. And I didn't understand at the time it was because I didn't value myself really. I didn't value my own gifts. And I had my list of things I wanted. And when they started happening, I was like, okay, thank you, God, for my presence, and I'll call back when I'm ready for something else. I mean, that's basically how I was treating the universe, like just a catalog I was placing orders with. And so I wasn't honoring what I was given, and then things in my life started slowing down, and I didn't get this. I didn't get why this was happening. With the law of divine compensation, if we are not dealing honorably with the sacred, that stuff starts slowing down. We deal honorably with God and with all human instruments through which God's good is manifest for you. Right? So to keep the good flowing, we have to participate in that good. Right? I can't just wait for somebody else to toss a ball. I'm going to have to toss it back if we want to keep it going. Right? My biggest lesson in this entitlement paradigm I was stuck in at the time was I was invited by the minister here, Joanne Bacon, to teach an energy healing class. It was the first time I'd ever taught like a full-on workshop. And I asked a love donation, something like $30, because it was a pretty intensive class. I had people in the class tell me, well, this is your spiritual gift from God. You shouldn't be charging money for it. And I took a hit. I was like, whoa, I'm not even worth all of the education I paid for? I'm not even worth all the education my husband paid for? I was like, come on. And so I just, I came here and I started listening and I started learning and I started putting stuff to work. There's a lot of good information. I mean, there's wonderful information here, but all Unity churches have wonderful information if we take it and start working it, right? So I looked at myself, like, why would I withhold something? Why would I hang on to something? It's always out of fear. It's always out of fear. If we're hanging on to something, it's out of fear. It may look like entitlement. It may look like greed. It may look like poverty, but it is fear. It is lack of faith. It is seeing the image of limitation and lack. It's speaking words of limitation and lack. It's living from lack because we're not believing. It's like, well, I can't toss this anywhere because I'll never get another one back. What if there's not another one? And this is a really cute one with a sweet little face on it. And if I throw it out there to Bonnie, like Bonnie may take it and run, and then I'm having no happy face ball. Because there's not enough. There's not enough of these in the world. And that's what we do. We stop seeing God as the ultimate source in our life. Okay, we've made an idol. Sometimes it's what it also is we lack faith in ourselves in being a channel for good to flow from. We think, oh, I've got to meet these certain criteria first. I'm not good enough yet to be a channel for good. Okay, that happens too. Okay, so we're holding thoughts of lack. If we're holding thoughts of lack and speaking thoughts of lack, now we're living a life of lack too. The law of divine compensation is always at work in our life. Always at work in our life. If somebody decided to go into a store and they thought, well, you know what, I didn't really make very good money this week, and so this store should just give me this thing because, they're rich, they're a store, right? So I'm just going to take it. Now there's a chance that person could get arrested walking out the door. The law of divine compensation. Now they've spiraled off into some more suffering. Right? First they're caught up in their poverty, and then it's like, well, now I'm suffering. I got arrested. I got caught. Where if somebody walks into that store and decides, oh, I really want this thing. It would be good in my life. This would work out well. And they compensate with money. They pay for it. They walk out of there, and they're like, yeah, I got this thing. And they can show it off, and they don't have to worry about it. Right? They enjoy it. You shall deal honorably with God and with all human instruments through which God's good is manifest for you. Honoring God also restores us. Honoring God restores us because we're living in faith. We are acting on faith. We are walking in faith. We are giving in faith. If we hold back out of fear, we start hemorrhaging vital life force energy because we're in a lack consciousness. Now, if we're in lack consciousness, we don't see God as the source of our supply. We're imagining lack. We're speaking lack. We're living lack. We get focused on the conditions in our life. We start fretting about all the problems in our life. We know how draining that is, right? If something is draining you, you're hemorrhaging your own vital life force energy. You're sending that energy somewhere that it can't do any work. It cannot do work for you for good. Now, you do good, the universe responds. It has to. It's all about tossing this ball. You toss the ball. The universe will never hold on to the ball. That's not the nature of the universe. God is expansive. God is about forward motion and momentum. There's never a hanging on. Right? So you toss the ball will always get tossed back to you. You do the good will always get tossed back to you. Right? All the actions. This is just a representation of an action. That's all. Here's some good I'm going to do. Bam. Here's some good I'm going to do. There we go. Don't throw that at me. It's too tiny. I'll never catch it. Anybody else want an earth ball to remember this day? Okay, Kevin, give this one to Jenny behind you. Thank you. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Woo! Okay. Oh, I'm having a blast here. Whoops, there we go. Woo! Hey, at least a lounge in the chair. Okay, if you didn't get one, there's some up here, right? Jaren here. Woo!
It's not enough.
Taylor.
It's mine.
Okay. Only you can stop the flow of good in your life. Only you can. Only you. The universe will never stop because its nature is to keep giving you good. Its nature is to keep giving you good. If you take your ball and you try to tuck it away and keep it, right, that's when stuff in your life starts, literally, it's going to fall apart. Stuff in your life is going to stop moving so well. There's going to be a lot of stuckness, a lot of like, oh my gosh, why didn't that work out? Why did this fall apart again? You're not going to be as solution-oriented. You're going to be focused on problems. So it's going to feel like the problems just keep stacking up. Now, in the story of in the Ten Commandments story, when the Hebrews left Egypt with Moses, before they got to Mount Sinai, they were traveling, and after a while they ran out of food, and they were hungry. So we're hungry. Moses prays to the Lord. The Lord says, well, I will rain down manna upon you. Every day you will have this. Every day there will be enough for that day. Don't worry about it. I'll give you more the next day. So just gather up what you need, eat your fill. But don't hoard it. Or don't hoard it and try to save it for the next day. Well, they did anyway, because they were still so unsure. They were still learning about having faith. So the first day, it rained manna, and they gathered it up, and they hoarded it, and it rotted. But the next day, there was all this manna. There was more fresh manna every single day. Why would we want to hang on to this ball? It's so much more fun to play. It's so much more fun to play. Like, I really enjoyed throwing balls out there, you guys. Little earths. Right, that was good. So we don't want to hang on to this. We want to keep it going. This is a game we're playing, remember? Like, we came into this body for an experience. We're a soul. There's just a small part of us really here in this physical experience. The greater part of us is in the non-physical. It's our soul. We don't see that part of ourselves, But we're here to play a game. And that game in our life is giving and receiving. Right? Because we send stuff out and we get more stuff back. And we keep getting to do this. Right? That's our game. So here's our call to action. I have an affirmation. I have an affirmation for us, which is kind of fun. It's right off the 12 Powers website. God is my source. I freely give. I freely receive. Let's say that together. God is my source. I freely give. I freely receive. Also, I'm going to ask you to consider this. I'm going to talk about something that most Unity churches don't talk about, except maybe every 2.5 years, which I've been here just over 2.5 years. And this will be my second time ever mentioning this, and it's tithing. Now, I'm mentioning tithing only, not as a judgment at all, right? I'm mentioning tithing because tithing is the greatest indicator we have of where our lack consciousness is, or if we're in abundance consciousness. Besides, I learned a couple of new things about tithing that I didn't know. So this is new to me. Okay, tithing. You've heard that, and God says, tithe 10% of all your stuff, right? He mentioned grains and cattle and stuff like that. We're supposed to give 10%. But the number 10 biblically represents some really interesting things. And you can, if you search Bible numerology, all kinds of interesting numbers in the Bible. 10 signifies law and responsibility. And think about this. Law. God does its part. Always. God always does its part without fail. Responsibility. We got to do our part. So think about this. We do our part. God does his part. We do our part. God does his part. This is giving and receiving. This is giving, the cycle of giving and receiving. Okay, when we got the 10 Commandments, that was the exact number of very basic, simple spiritual laws that a people needed to live in harmony with each other. And then, of course, it caused a ripple through our whole planetary consciousness over these thousands of years, right? And it's about living in harmony. 10% is what we give to live in harmony. It is a number of integration, right? This is like, I was like, what? A lot of this is in that book too, the Prosperity's 10 Commandments. The whole law, honor thy mother and father, it was actually all about tithing. It was like crazy. So 10% is a number of integration. It is a tipping point, tipping us from lack consciousness into abundance consciousness. Okay? Now, one more thing that was kind of funny. In the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 10, this is where the Lord is talking about tithing. So he mentions, what to tithe the 10%. And then the Lord says, test me. Test me. Do this, and I will open the windows of heaven for you and pour out so much blessing, you will not have enough room for it. You will not have enough room for it. It's because it's a tipping point. When we go, God never holds back from us. We hold back from ourselves because we've got some lack consciousness going. We are desperately holding on to our little toy, afraid to give it because we might never get it back, afraid there won't be enough. What happens if we give this away and then we really, really need it? Okay, that's the only thing that keeps us from the abundance in our life, is us. Okay, God always would pour open the gates of heaven to us, but we have to be capable of receiving it, and we're not capable of receiving it until we go through our own personal tipping point. So actually, know this, tithing to a church you love is an act of faith. It honors how you are spiritually fed, because you get information you can put to work when you walk out of this room. Or any church, right? Any church. Or anywhere God's good is manifest through you, or manifest through another person, and you enjoy that goodness of that manifestation, right? Like I've tithed to other places too. I tithe to Silent Unity also, because sometimes you get on the phone with them, so I need to pray, right? And they're like, they're there, okay? So tithing honors how we are spiritually fed. It demonstrates faith in God as the source of our supply, and it teaches us how to view God as the limitless source of our good. Because we're integrating teachings. We're integrating all of this information. So on the surface level, here we have honor thy father and thy mother. Right? Who knew how deep that would go, right? Honor thy father and thy mother. And we can simply do this in the simplest way. It's like, okay, you gave me life. I honor that. We can go a little deeper. Okay, so I'm going to live up to my potential, and I'm going to break the cycles of lack. I'm going to break the cycles of limitation, and I'm going to love big. I'm going to love in such a way that everybody's like, oh my gosh, that person, they just like love everybody, right? We can go even deeper than that. It's like, oh, I'm going to call forth the joy. Like, I'm going to send out so much joy and so much good into this world. It's going to be crazy. People are going to think I'm crazy. There's so much love and goodness here. And still we can go deeper. And remember the law of divine compensation. And that number 10, law and responsibility and integration. I do my part. God has to respond. It just does. God is actually always giving to us, but we don't notice all the other stuff coming at us until we give something, right? Because then we hook up with that. It's like, oh, my heart felt so good giving this. Wow, did you see that other good that came at me? Right, so we're hooking up with that. Law and responsibility and integration. We are working with God on this. We do our part, God does his part. Now, are we hanging on to this ball? Right? How are we giving in this world? Are we hanging on to this ball? You shall deal honorably with God and with all human instruments through which God's good is manifest for you. God is actively happening everywhere, through every person. God is actively happening just here in the space between us. Like if you could see all that activity, there'd just be all this gold, sparkly, and blue light, right? That's how I would see it. You see whatever color you want, right? But it would be happening all here between us. We let that happen between us. We jump into the cycle of that giving and receiving, and we become radical revolutionaries with that. When we are participating freely with this activity, guys are cracking me up. When we participate freely with this activity, then we are the activity. We are the activity of God when we are participating freely with us. And we will recognize everyone as instruments of God. We recognize everyone as that potential instrument that more good can come through. We're honoring God then in the space between us. And this is how we are creating heaven on earth. So until next time, remember, you are this divine activity of God walking around in a body. You are the heart and you are the hands of God in this world. And everything you do, you are blessed, and so it is. So it is. Thank you.